All right, I do feel a little bit like Britney Spears. I'm not going to sing you a song, you're welcome. I'm also going to try not to amuse myself so much that I burst out laughing, because you might end up deaf if that happens too close to a mic. So I'm going to try to keep it down. All right, well, thank you very much first for coming here and listening to us by this beautiful blue sky, no wind day. I know it's not, it's not really in our nature to do such things, so I really appreciate it that you guys took some time to come and try to be part of that thing that we're trying to create here with Jasper. Life as a pro, that was quite a broad subject, and when Jasper first asked us to be part of that, I was quite excited, also quite intimidated. We do talk a lot about skydiving in a lot of different contexts, but this specific stage thing with some light in our face, it's not very in our comfort zone. So it's quite an interesting exercise as well, so bear with us. What I want to talk to you about is teaching. Obviously, the two previous lectures, I've been touching on that topic a lot, but when I was kind of rattling my brain around what am I going to talk about, it kind of imposed itself at the topic for me, because that's really what's keeping me on the road for all those years. That's what I do most of my time. That's most of my social interaction, or either students or fellow teachers. And that's a topic I feel really passionate about. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I've been learning, so Jasper already kind of introduced me, so I guess I can kind of skip the next one. But basically, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and teaching and traveling especially for about 10 years. Well, talent instructor for about 1 month, so don't look at that one. But as far as traveling, load organizing, and teaching in the sky, I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing a lot of different things, from basic boogie skills camps up to world records organizing. And I feel like I've gained a lot of insights over the years. And I basically, when I try to engineer that talk, I kind of geared it towards if I could make that presentation to 20-year-old myself, so I could not do certain mistakes or do better from the get-go, that's what I would tell her. So that's basically me talking to past me. That's super weird, but bear with me on that. So, how can we teach better? Mind, body, and soul, it's a bit of a hippie title, but basically what I want to say with this is, as the guys have touched on earlier, it's an all-round thing. It's an all-round lifestyle. Like we wake up and then we spend our day and our nights in skydiving with skydivers. It touches on a lot of things. We use our minds a lot, and we should use our mind more. It's kind of, I hope, what you're going to get after this presentation. Our body, how we take care of them and how they work. And our soul as well, because if we do this, it's because it makes us happy, and hopefully what we try to bring to other people is that same happiness, try to share that with them. So I'm going to start with talking about knowing and understanding our students. Then we'll move on to the importance of a comprehensive explanation, the power of visualization, the importance of sleep, the chapter none of you is going to want to listen to, but I promise you it's important. And then lead by example and keep on learning. So what I hope with this, what I hope to do with this is to give perspective into what it is that we're doing every day when we have this lifestyle, and also to inspire better practice. Again, when I started, I basically had no idea about any of those things, and I kind of learned them on the go with a lot of trial and error. And what Jasper is trying to do here with this Life as Pro conference, but also with the coach workshop, I think is all going in this same direction of trying to educate and trying to use the knowledge that some of us have gained over the course of 10, 20, 40 years of skydiving and give it to you guys. Because when I look at this auditorium, most of you are in the first months or in the first years of your coaching career. And if I can give you just a few tips or any kind of overall picture of what it was for me, what I've learned along those years, and then you can be this generation that starts with the knowledge of the previous and don't have to go through everything we had to go through to learn it, then I think our time here is not going to be wasted. The best research any educator can do or tap into is knowing and understanding the learner they serve. Everything else is secondary. So George Kouros doesn't really matter, but he's kind of a leadership, managerial guru. You can find books on those topics from him. But I find this sentence very interesting because it really puts the individual at the core of what you're doing. And that's something, for those of you who've heard Julian's lecture on sports didactic, it's very important. The person you have in front of you, the person you're trying to teach, needs to be your main focus. And if you can understand and know them, then you'll be able to provide a better coaching for them and enhance their experience. So first, I'm going to go a little bit into individual and group assessment. First, the question you need to ask yourself is, where are you? Are you at a boogie? Are you at a skills camp? Already that makes a big difference. Are you at VectorFest? Or are you at a skills camp in Finland? Not going to be the same way of talking to people, the same type of jumps that you're going to do. So you really need to be first asking you that, like, who am I catering to? Where am I? What kind of events? And where geographically? What kind of culture am I talking to? Then obviously, who? In your groups, you're going to have all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of social backgrounds, of educational background, of cultural background, and being able to understand who the people you're talking to is going to make a huge difference in what you can bring them. You're not, if you're going to bunch a whole lot of theory on a young, instinctive flyer who just run out of school because he was bored with it, it's not going to go so well with him. But on the other hand, if you tell somebody who's a little bit older, a bit more geeky or educated, and you tell him, just feel the wind, bro, that's not going to work so well for him either. So you need to understand who you're talking to and adapt the way you speak, adapt your vocabulary, adapt your behavior, to connect with that person, to level with them, and be able to provide them what they need. If you don't take time to ask yourself who you're talking to, you're going to make major mistakes. Then what? What do they want to know? What do they already know? So all this happens usually, like if you get a group in the morning, you can do it Sharon style, everybody sits on the floor and talks one after another. You can go have a coffee together, like you can bring your own style in there, but I find that it's extremely important to start your day with a group assessment and make sure you ask the right questions. So you need to be able to know what they already feel super comfortable doing, what is just outside of their comfort zone, and what is completely outside of their comfort zone, because that's going to help you create a plan for the day that both challenges them and teaches them something, but also not put them in danger. And we've gone over that a lot during the coach workshop. It is our responsibility that the people are walking away from that event with their 2 legs and happy faces. So you want to keep them safe. And pushing people too much out of their comfort zone can be really dangerous. So you need to really take time for those questions and make sure that you have a deep understanding of what's going on, where they're at, and where they want to go. And then finally is the why. Why do they want to learn this? Why are they here at this event? Why are they here with those people? And this also comes with asking questions, obviously, but sometimes you realize that what people tell you, the first thing that people tell you might not be exactly their why. And with experience, you'll be able to find out, and certain attitude will reveal certain deeper motivation to people. So the main motivation usually is you love flying, you want to get better at it, you want to belong to a group. The story of Marius earlier, really wanting to be on that jump he had no business being in. This desire we have of being one of the cool kids, and usually the older we get, the more we chill down with that. We've proved a few things with ourselves, and then we get better at it. But when we're young, the appearance matters a lot. And you need to be aware of that for yourself, if possible. That's a good start, but also with the people that you're talking to. So try to identify that, because that can give you cues to potential dangerous behavior. Somebody who's like really, really eager to show you that they can do it, to show you that they're good, potentially they're going to be the one in your jumps that are going to have kind of rash, erratic, out of their skill set kind of behavior, and that can put people in danger. So if you can identify that, you're going to be better off dealing with them and catering to them. My second point that Pete has touched on already, remember everybody's name. Really difficult. I don't know, how to show of hands here, I see a lot of coaches, like who can always remember all the names of all the people in their group? Yep, that's what I thought. So it's not easy. Unless you're this kind of weird extraterrestrial person named Craig Girard, who can remember the name of somebody he jumped once 10 years ago. True story. This guy is, I don't know how he does it. It is really difficult to remember everybody's name. So Pete's already touched on that. Like writing them down is a really good thing. I don't know, for those of you who've coached at Fly, because you have to fill up that form, sometimes every single jumps. Did you find, for those of you who coached at Fly, did you find that it was easier in this boogie to remember people's name? Yep. So that's a very easy trick. And we all learn differently, but writing down more than once is going to make them way easier for you to remember. There's other tricks, like depending on how your memory works, when you get everybody's name in the morning, try to use a little technique of like that name and associate it with a color or some distinctive sign that kind of strikes your memory. Memory works better when something shocks us, when something is out of the ordinary. So if you associate a name with a distinctive piece of clothing or something on their face or the way they talk, whatever kind of amuses you or mark your memory, you'll have a way better time doing that. And it's very important to remember people's name because boy, dude, girl is only going to go so far. When you address people and you look them in the eye and you can say their name, they feel much more engaged and linked to you, and they will feel like you're seeing them. And it's very important that people feel seen. The bigger the group, the harder it's for you, but the more important as well. When we organize big ways, if somebody feels like it's been through an entire 3 or 4 days of workshop and you still don't know their name, and in the debrief you barely talk about them, what do you think they're going to leave the event with kind of impression are they going to leave the event? Now, if every single debrief, you have even just a few seconds on that person and you can remember their name, they're going to leave with a way different impression and you will have done your job way better. So it's not easy, but especially because it's not easy, try to really focus on that. And then my last point, empower people. Obviously, you're the coach. You're the one who helping them with their progression. You're the one with the knowledge. You can point out little mistakes, little detail, help them out. But as much as possible, you want to make them a part of their progression. If it's only coming from you and you're just pouring criticism or knowledge or positive feedback even, but they're just receiving and not having a chance to participate, it doesn't work as well. So as Marius has been really putting on for the coach workshop, like asking questions is an amazing way to do that. Like give people a chance to express how they felt about the jump, how they think something happened, or if something unsafe or difficult happened, what was their perspective of it, and what was the reason, not why, they did that at that moment. And that's technique I've learned also as well in my competitive years of if you land from a jump and you start like pointing finger at somebody and telling them what they did wrong, or if you land and you give everybody individually a chance to speak about their own experience and point out what they did good and what they did wrong, the vibe is going to be completely different. Basically, when people start feeling attacked, we have a tendency to close off, and then we are way less capable of learning and of getting feedback. If you had a chance to open up and present things and opinion, it's going to work much better. So as much as possible, try to give people that opportunity. That's one of those sentences that works way better in French. Ce qui se conçoit bien s'énonce clairement. Whatever we conceive well, we express clearly, and words flow with ease. So that leads me to my next point, the importance of a comprehensive explanation. So the first point, obviously, is know what you're talking about. If you're teaching about angle flying and you don't really understand how angle flying works, chances are you're not going to do such a good job at it. So make sure, and also for your own confidence, if you walk into a group and you feel like maybe somebody in the group knows more about the topic than you do, not such a good feeling. And the knowledge is available, whether there's plenty of literature, Skydive Mag posts tons of different articles about different things. You always have somebody on drop zones, or if you're a young coach in an event, there's always more experienced coach that you can ask. So make sure that you own your stuff. Make sure that you walk into a group with confidence and that you know what you're talking about. And then start with why. I'm borrowing this title from a great tech talk, a really shitty book from Simon Sinek. Seriously, listen to the TED Talk, don't read the book. Where the idea is try to give people a really in-depth explanation, so when you are debriefing them, you can tap back into what you introduced them at the first place. That's something we did with my first group during the coach workshop. I gave them a little 10-minute mini lecture on angle flying, like how do we go more steep, less steep? How do we go faster, less fast? Like creating friction, speed on trajectory, how do we turn? Like all the very basic elements. And then once you have that, then you can help people. If somebody's always above and behind, now you try to make them, from the information you just explained to them, okay, if you're here, what do you think the problem is? What do you think you need to do to fix the problem? Okay, first I need to go there. Yeah, how do you go there? I speed up. How do you speed up? We just talked about it. You raise some drag, you go further. Now I'm still too high. What do I need to do? Put more angle. Okay, how do I put more angle? You've just touched on it. Like if you give people a chance to explain things clearly to them, you'll be surprised how many people have actually never heard it. For me, that's one of the reasons I added that slide actually in this lecture is so many times, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and over the last years and years, I give that little talk to people, and they've never really heard it. And they kind of wing it, and they kind of understand how to put more angle, and they kind of understand the notion of speed, but speed on trajectory, maybe not so much. And once you give them that talk, you see like light bulb, like, oh yeah, actually that's not intellectually complicated to understand. What's difficult is thinking about the right thing at the right time when you fly. And that's actually the most difficult thing you'll have to teach people. Thinking, analyzing a situation, reacting to that situation in the right way. But if they don't have the right tool in their toolbox, like, it's not gonna happen. So make sure that you start by whatever dimension, head down, angle, head up, whatever you're teaching, make sure that you give the people the right tools in their toolbox so they can tap into that and actually start working on the most difficult part of skydiving, which is thinking when we fly. I don't know how you feel about that, guys, but for me, it took hundreds and hundreds of jumps to be able to process a thought when I flew the same way I could do it on the ground. And that's why when a couple years ago I started learning wingsuiting, it was way easier and way quicker for me to learn because obviously I knew how to fly my body, but also I was able, when I flew, to be like, okay, this does that, this does that, this does that. And I had this inner monologue that I would have been completely unable to have when I had a few hundred jumps. So make sure you give the people the right toolbox, and then you can take them into the hard game, which is thinking when they fly. The power of visualization. The guys tapped on it. I know Will is going to tap on it again. But basically what I realized also from Boogie and Skills Camp organizing is that those techniques that we learn about in competition setup, in record setup, which help tremendously. Like you cannot do a world record or you cannot participate in a world championship if you don't know at least a little bit about visualizing. But for some reason, it stopped there. Anything else above high-level competition or even just competition and records, people have never heard about visualization, which is a shame because it's an amazing tool. And the reason it's used in high-level performance setup, it's because it works. It works really well. And not just in skydiving. If you've done any kinds of other sports in a competitive manner, that's something that's super, super important. So I realized people were highly uneducated about that. They had no idea how to do it, exactly what it was. And when I started integrating this into my normal coaching, I really started watching the difference and people really starting to learn better and to progress quicker. And what I usually tell people is that obviously it's not because you visualize something right that you're going to go and suddenly do it straight away. But maybe instead of taking 50 jumps or 20 jumps to learn, it's going to take you 30 or 5. Like you're going to reduce the amount of time and the amount of try that you need to achieve the same results. When we know how much a skydive costs, that's a pretty good argument to use something. So yeah, I started to introduce visualization to even beginner level groups. Practice makes perfect. Like everything else, visualization is something you learn, and when you try the first time, it's not necessarily easy. Some people have it easier than others. I personally am not so good at it. Like it really takes a lot of brain power for me to be able to visualize something, especially when we start having different orientation in the same skydive and what's left and what's right. I get lost quite easily on it. But the good news is, the more you practice, the easier it becomes, like everything else. So make sure that you explain that to people and make exercises with them and run them through it and tell them not to be discouraged if it's difficult for them at first because it will get easier. visualize what you want to do. It's the pink elephant, blue giraffe theory of the brain does not register the negation. So if you tell people, don't think about that, obviously you're thinking about that. Don't think about a pink elephant, pink elephant. So when you visualize something, and you visualize something that you don't want to do, like don't be off level, don't be off level, don't be off level, basically you're brainwashing yourself to be off level. You keep creating this path in your brain that is basically the wrong one. So when you teach people to visualize something, teach them to visualize the right thing, visualize what they want to do. If there's a mistake they've been repeatedly doing in the skydive, tell them, okay, now we need to find what's the correct opposite of that mistake. What's the correct action that counters that mistake? And that's what you're going to focus on. So if you're off level the entire jump, now you're going to focus on the level, what it means, what it looks like. Now, that being said, it's okay to have little scenarios to basically be able to react. Because usually when we fly, what we fail to recognize is that picture that we have is the wrong one and we need to do something about it. Very often when you're behind on the skydive or feeling out of your comfort zone, what you go into is what I call the oh fuck mode, where instead of telling yourself, this is what's going on and this is what I need to do to fix it, you're like, ah, fuck, I'm behind again, I'm never gonna catch up with them, motherfuckers. And while your brain is going on about how bad you are or how difficult this is or how everything is like, ah, what's going on, you're not assessing a situation and reacting to it accordingly. So mention that to people, so they start recognizing those red flags in their mind, and teach them having little scenarios. So the classic example, if that guy who's learning angle flying and he's above and behind and he's saying to himself, oh fuck, I'm behind again, and then tell them, okay, if you see this, you need to recognize what that means, and what that means is you're too flat, above, and behind, and then again, as I explained earlier, what do you need to do to fix it? And if you run people through that on the ground, and tell them to prepare that little scenarios in their head, so when they see this visual, it rings a bell in their head, and then they know what they need to do, very most likely they're going to be able to achieve it way quicker. If you've never ever touched on those subjects, they're going to stay stuck in the oh fuck mode for a very long time, or at least way longer than they need to. Dissociated and associated visualization. Does that mean something to everyone? Ring a bell a little bit? It's basically whether you visualize from the inside or from the outside. So dissociated visualization is like you're seeing yourself like you have your personal drone flying around you, or if you have a cameraman that's looking at you, somebody else's GoPro. So it's the capacity of watching your body in 3D doing the thing. So in skydiving, watch yourself climbing out on exit with the plane, with the rest of the group, your approach, your jump, your break off, everything from an outside perspective. And then there's associated visualization, which means what are you going to see? Like, who are you climbing out after? What is your picture on exits? What's your picture on approach? What does it look to be on goddamn level? What's your break off is going to be? And with this, you also associate sensation. Feelings. Where is the wind going to press on my body? Is there going to be a difference of sound if I go from belly to head down, for example, change of speed? Like, try to associate as much sensations as possible, because those are really what's going to help you own that visualization and make it more realistic and more transferable to your action. So use those tools, because they're quite amazing and they really, really work. Here we go. The importance of sleep. Who of you here sleeps at least 8 hours a night every night? Wow, you guys are my heroes. Okay, I'm surprised that I have a few hands raising up, but as you can see, that's not most people here. We rarely sleep enough. Most of us don't sleep 8 hours a night every night. Obviously, skydiving, there's a strong social aspect in it, right? Like, we're not here to go to bed at 9 every night and not talk to anyone. Like, we usually create incredible bonds, incredible friendship. We have people throwing amazing parties, especially this guy right there. So it is very tempting to not really care about that. And we all have the tendency of having, we have our priority list, and then we have sleep all the way on the bottom. It's basically the last thing we do when we've done doing everything else, including scrolling on Facebook and not really doing anything. That's not super sustainable, unfortunately. Probably some of you are like, really, Domi? You telling me that? For sure. So those of you who've known me for a long time, I was probably more known for being up all night, raging, than being the girl who goes to bed early. So I know it can sound a bit hypocritical for those people. But what happened to me is actually something as super anecdotic as a podcast. I was sent a podcast from Joe Rogan, who was talking to Matthew Walkers, who wrote a book called Why We Sleep, which I highly recommend. For this one, both the podcast and the book are amazing. And when I was on my road trip last winter, Damien and I got it as an audiobook and listened to it on the way. And that was edifying. We all know sleep is important. Our mom told us, which is why probably we're like, yeah, mom, right, whatever. But I didn't really realize all the implication. And when I started actually looking into the actual state of science about it, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do? From like how well we can, our health is the primary factor that this is going to affect, to how gracefully we're going to age, how good our body is going to allow us to keep on charging, like Pete over here, but also how we learn. And I kind of knew, but not really knew about that. So I'm going to throw a few not so fun facts about sleep at you. First, you do not know how sleep deprived you are when you are sleep deprived. So everybody who tells you they sleep 6 hours a night, but they got it, they're fine, like no worries, they can handle it. Like, I mean, probably they still function, no worries. They still get up in the morning and do what they have to do, but they are indeed sleep deprived. And there is indeed consequences on their health, but also on their social behavior. How well rested you are makes a big difference on how grumpy or easy to deal with you're going to be. And there's a big effect of denial. So just be aware of that. If you're sleep deprived, you're going to feel like, nah, I'm all right. But most likely, you're not really all right. The last 2 hours of sleep are when we process learning the most. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with like sleep cycles and rapid eye movement sleep, and like basically we go through different cycles, and at the end of those cycles is when we start really accumulating the knowledge. It's basically when our short-term memory is clear to make room for what we need for our short-term memory the next day, and it's stored into long-term memory. So that's basically when learning happens. So if you have really short nights and you don't really get to those last cycles, or if you go to bed absolutely hammered and full of alcohol or any other delicacies, that also doesn't work so well. So if you do that on the reg, like several times a week, like your learning capacity is going to be way, way damaged. So that's why when we organize at events, and you know that the participants or the people in your group have been sleeping 4 hours a night and getting shit-faced every night, imagine how much how much better they could learn if they have not done that. The IOC, International Olympic Committee, has been looking into sleep and consider it as crucial in sports improvement. And then the last one, you can read for yourself, out of 750 scientific studies on sleep and sports performance, all conclude the same. You need minimum 8 hours. Less than 8 hours, less improvement and learning. Less than 6 hours, way higher risk of injuries. I'm not going to throw the data on you, and if you read the Why We Sleep book, you can find all that there or online, but it's massive. And in a sport like ours, where mistakes and injuries are not usually benign, it puts into perspective how serious that actually is. And again, it's not because we've been getting away with stuff for a long time that it's a good idea. So again, don't mean to be the sleep Nazi here, but in general, try to be aware of this, because it really does make a difference. So yeah, the link between sleep and motor skill learning, I touched on it just before, and that's when we sleep that those process takes place. Basically, learning a motor skill, you change your brain, you change the pathway and the neural connection in your brain, so you're capable of doing a new move. So when we fly, learning a new orientation, being more efficient in the way we fly. I don't know if you guys have heard about something called overnight motor skill enhancement. But maybe some of you are actually familiar with the process. Like, for me, one of the big example I have in my own teaching, I'm in a tunnel camp, and I'm teaching somebody back layout. And they're kind of doing it with me holding them, but they're really struggling, and it's not quite clicking with them. So by the end of the first day of 45 minutes, they still cannot do it by themselves. And then they go to bed, they sleep 8 hours, like good boys. And then the next morning, they get in there, they can do back layouts. They have not practiced physically more during the night, but the learning process has occurred, and they're now able to do something that they were not able to do at the end of the previous day. And this is a very well-studied phenomenon as well. I think it started with a pianist, a musician, explaining the same kind of process of them trying to learn a song, or how do you say, a play? Trying to play something, they couldn't do it, and then the next morning, without any extra practice, first thing in the morning, they could do it. So basically, during the night, this process happens, and if you do not sleep enough, or if you do not sleep properly, then you cut yourself a chance from this process to happen. And I mean, eventually, you're gonna get it, but it's just gonna take more time. Being a role model is the most powerful form of educating. That's kind of speaks for itself. John Wooden, for those of you who don't know him, was a basketball coach from Los Angeles. I think he's one of the most awarded sports coach in the States. Like, he won multiple awards and medals for being awesome, pretty much. And that sentence for me is quite revealing, because we are responsible for how we behave ourselves, and the way we behave ourselves and the way we behave with other people is part of what we touched on earlier of creating a culture. So a role model is a person whose behavior, example, or success is or can be emulated by others. You're responsible for the culture you're creating. We touched on that a lot during the coach workshop, because I forgot the term, maybe Marius can help me there. You come in with a position of, no, what was that term? I forgot. A status? Positional status? Positional status. That means that before you even open your mouth or done anything with people that don't know you and you don't know them, just because you're the coach, just because in this context you've been put in the place of authorities, people are going to look up to you. And then that stops the moment you start talking and the moment you start behaving. And then you can either be worthy of this position or unworthy of it. And that encompasses a lot of little different things, from being on time, being respectful to other people, the way you treat the people on the drop zone, the way you treat the packers or the pilots or manifest, the way you treat people in your group. Like, you want to shine professionalism, and you want to inspire people to follow in your footsteps in doing those things. If you're rude to people, if you're not on time, you don't create respect, you don't create trust, and that's on you, and that's a shame, because you have this opportunity of creating a culture, my second point. And if you don't take up that role, if you don't take up that chance, you're failing the people that you're trying to educate, and you're not being part of basically improving. What we're doing here is constantly trying to be better than we were yesterday. And if everybody is into this mindset of pushing forward, of being the force behind a safer, a kinder, a nicer environment, then what are we doing here? And that's something that sounds a little bit hippie, and maybe we don't think about it so much, but it is a responsibility. And it is your responsibility, all of you, as the new generation of coach, to pick up that flame and really be the person you would like to have in your groups, and to create that atmosphere that we're trying to achieve here all together. I am still learning. Michelangelo, age 87. Pete Allen, age 55. Remain curious and keep learning. That was really interesting what you said, Pete, that you were always trying to touch on other sports just to be back into this mindset of being a beginner. And I've experienced exactly the same thing a couple years ago with learning how to wingsuit, or a few months ago trying to become a tunnel instructor. And it was super interesting to be back in this seat of, oh my God, I know nothing and I have everything to learn. And it does help you putting those shoes back on of like what it is to be a beginner, which is basically most of the people that you're teaching. So you can remember how it feels, and you can then understand them better and cater to them better. Hone your skills. Never stop learning. Even within your own discipline, if you stop learning, you're going to get passed by so quick. And you were giving the example of tunnel flying when it started, and the fact that it was really difficult for some people that were rock stars in the sky to suddenly be in the tunnel and suck. And the ego aspect of that was really, really difficult. There's glorious stories of super famous free flyers getting in the tunnel like, I got this, boom, broke both their arms trying to go head down on the first time. Awkward. So if you, and people who missed that train, people who thought like, tunnel, it's this like indoor things, that's not cool enough, or the sky, the freedom, the beauty. But really, for a lot of those, at least my interpretation of that was that their ego was not ready for people to watch them being beginner again. And a lot of those people who missed that train probably regretted it bitterly, because then all of you young, crazy people, super talented in the tunnel, passed them like, boom. And that was like difficult probably for them, but also for the work side of things, to put bread on your table at the end of the month. So if you stop learning, you stagnate, and then eventually you're going to be left behind. And especially in our day and age, with how fast everything goes, with how quick everything changes, you cannot stop learning. And also it'd be a shame too, because where's the fun in thinking you've made it and then you have nothing left to learn? Listen to others. When you're at the boogie, I have countless examples of stuff that became part of my briefing or my debriefing that I picked from listening to other people briefing and debriefing. Like I remember, like one example was Fly, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Rafa was coaching there, and he was telling people about like why we flew like that to go faster. And he was explaining how if you have your feet like this is the way your knees bend, and if you have your feet like that, this doesn't bend. And he was explaining how, for a reason of not creating more drag, he was helping to have your feet like that. And I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. And then I started adding my own twist to it and changing the way I explain it a little bit, but still, like that one little thing, I didn't think of it myself, and I felt stupid for not having thought of it myself. But I thought that was very well put. It was a very short explanation. It allowed people to understand why we were telling them to do things one way, and it was great. And I have a lot of other examples like that. So do that as much as possible. Like if you have time, sometimes it's difficult because you're in the rhythm of your own group, briefing, debriefing, jumping, packing. You don't always have time, but packing is a good time. You just go pack casually next to somebody who's debriefing and you try to listen to what they say. And you're gonna learn a shit ton doing that. And then finally, do your research. We live in a day and age where information is available mostly for free, absolutely everywhere. From podcasts to MOOCs, to YouTube channels, videos, tutorials. Like you can educate yourself about so many topics, from weather, aerodynamics, pedagogy, how to teach better. There's a wealth of information out there that you can just go and grab for free, and sometimes for a very small fee. Why would you not do that? If you want to become a better coach, but also a more interesting person, it is there at your disposal, and all you have to do is look. So it is a mindset of really trying always to look for more information. Like if you don't have this mindset, you're gonna, again, for different reasons, find that other people passes you. And it's a shame because it is really out there. And we're done. Pretty pictures for you. Meditation on the beach in the morning by yours truly. Thank you very much for listening to me rambling about for a solid 30 minutes now, maybe even longer. I hope some of the things I said resonated with you and potentially can help you in your future path of becoming the new generation of coach, sky and tunnel coach out there. Because as Pete was saying, I think the future is super exciting for us. The technology, the gear that we're using, that kind of event when we're really trying to push forward and do a better job, I think is opening some incredible doors, and I really look forward for the next 20 years. Thank you very much.